Oh, we are live. Welcome to Sidetrack, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. Happy whatever you are. Here in the UK, the sun's come out. It's amazing. I actually got sunburnt yesterday. I got a video going on tomorrow, and you watch me nearly die. It's great. So, and I'm not joking. Watch it tomorrow. I nearly die. So, we're here with young Matthew, or not so young Matthew, because he had a birthday in the week. So, old fart Matthew.
Old fart Matthew. Welcome to Old Fart.
Very, very young Stormy. Look at him. He's looked like 12 years old. Look at cheeky little chappy.
13 at the most.
And elderly Harris. How are you, sir? How is everybody?
Doing well.
Doing good.
Awake.
That's the least we can ask for. And obviously we've got people in the comments as normal. Mark's with us. Bob's with us. SciQuest is with us. Sci-fi Quest. And Stormy's with us. Some bloke called Stormy. I don't know. Don't get it. And we are ready to go. So today we are going to be talking about sci-fi and its influence on real life a little bit. But I'm going to tell you why in a minute. But before that, we'll obviously say hello to everybody, see how we're doing, and then we'll crack on. But I'm going to run the credits if I can remember how to do it. La 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 la. That one.
Never fast enough. I try to run.
How are we, guys? Anyway, how are we all doing?
Doing good.
Doing well.
Doing
Good.
pretty good. Half dead, but half alive too.
Were you out last night, young Harris?
No, I was streaming video games with Sci-Fi Quest was there with me for literally 10 hours yesterday. 4 hours of trying to figure out technology and 6 hours of actually streaming.
Well, I know
Wow.
Matthew is trying to think of some things to help you with that, to get your new G3 gaming channel going.
Woo.
Yes.
So, Sarah, you're with us. Kerry's with us. R's with us. Kaha is one of my favorite names because every time I say it, I go, Kaha! Is with us 3 minutes late. We're late. I'm sorry, but I was faffing around. It was my fault. And we forgot to invite Stormy in as well. So, a little bit. Oops. So anyway, I was watching another YouTube channel the other day, and they were talking about Star Trek, and one of the people on the panel made the bold claim that without Star Trek, that is more than just art, it is actually culture. Without Star Trek, though, we would not have mobile phones technology. And they meant it. Somebody else on the panel went, don't be an idiot. That's the stupidest thing we've ever heard of in our lives. But he genuinely seemed to believe that. So, John, hey, Mark Carrier. How are you, Mark? How you diddling? I've messaged you. Message me back, Mark. Dang you. So I just basically wanted to talk about that psychology and Stormy. We're going to be relying on you quite a lot here. So, brain on, ready to go?
Ready to go.
Right. So, that first statement. If it wasn't for Star Trek, we wouldn't have mobile phones. Anybody want to jump on that before?
Well, didn't we have landline phones when we definitely had landline phones when Star Trek was airing?
No, mate. Landline phones weren't invented until the 1980s.
Landline phones.
Landline phones were around
Weren't
for.
invented until the 1980s.
What? No.
What?
Alexander Graham Bell had a big thing, and he wore a leather jacket and one glove. I know that's Michael Jackson. Oh no, landline phones were invented in what was it, Storm? It was like the 1850s or something.
It was something like that. Yeah, it was.
1876.
Because it was the phonogram first, huh? Or a couple
Harris,
different things.
you've disappeared.
I know. I put a bunch of eye drops in and my eyes are dying. I thought it would help me wake up, and nope, I just look like I'm crying now. So,
that we want to see.
Yeah.
Right. My point is, right,
Yeah.
landline phones already existed. So the concept of a phone already existed. Star Trek might have had their communicators, which was portable, but the idea of having portable devices has always been a thing. Star Trek didn't invent the idea of a portable telephone. They just used it in their show.
Well, I don't know. Are we talking about just the portable cell phone, like the Nokia things that will outlast human civilization? Or are we talking about smartphones. There were, I don't know if you guys remember Omni magazine from the 70s and the 80s, but there were frequent articles about future technologies that would develop into a tricorder. I think the best analogy in terms of like Star Trek and modern technology is not necessarily the phone part of the communicator part. I think it's the all the things that a tricorder can do. If you remember way back probably to the 80s or 90s, the first commercials AT&T did, narrated by Tom Selleck, is like, there's this guy, he calls his wife on his wrist phone, and she says, "Well, how was your day?" He says it was great, and he's out like in Yosemite or someplace, just gorgeous mountain range. Well, the phone, the actual video phone, that was drawn on in Dick Tracy comics more than 100 years ago.
Yeah, through the little video screen, and we've actually got them now. We can actually do it through smartphones now, which is
crazy. It's just insane. And
can't say that Dick Tracy invented we wouldn't have smartwatches if it wasn't for Dick Tracy.
But there's been a lot of articles over the last 50 years about science fiction is always the predecessor of where our technology is going to be. Because the science fiction guys, they dream up all of these remarkable things. And somebody eventually says, "Oh, that was a really damn good idea." And they progress from there. I mean, even there was a children's book series called Tom Swift, not the TV series, it was a series from, going back to more than 100 years. And, there were all sorts of crazy titles. Tom Swift and the oceanographical accelerator or some crazy invention. And if you read those books as a kid, you'll say, "Oh, those things are kind of, drone torpedoes or drone ships that swim under the water now." I mean, all those things are kind of coming true as our technology goes forward. And one of the guys that was developing the BlackBerry, he famously said that, the tricorder was one of the primary inspirations of the BlackBerry first phone, be able to send text messages. And even in the Apple patent for the iPhone and iPad, they used Stanley Kubrick's 2001 as part of the idea because they were using that technology in the film. So that is a documented use of art inspiring technology decades later.
Yeah, you could actually argue that Arthur C. Clarke invented the iPad because that's what we saw in 2001 Space Odyssey, was using it for like diagnostics and things like this. I think Mark Cartier did have it a little while, who's from obviously the Shuttlepod show. Absolute legend. Please go and find them and subscribe. Saying that basically we would have mobile phones, but maybe we wouldn't have flip phones. And I mean, I did write his name down. Martin Cooper was the head, and it was the director at Motorola Research and Development back when they were trying to create the first of their version phones. And they looked at all the different types of phone, and he apparently was like, "I want something that looks a bit like that Star Trek communicator." And that's basically that was their inspiration for why they had that design. And then they realized it was really reliable. It was way better than their slip-ups and things and all sorts.
Yeah.
So it is obviously a nonsense to say we wouldn't have mobile phones. But like you said, sometimes this inspiration comes from. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, the art would definitely inspire the people who are creating the technology. I think that's a given. Science fiction writers will make all these weird, fantastical things, and then people in the future will go, "Well, I'm working on a project. I'd quite like to make this from this show." They might already be working on that project, but they would be inspired by something from the show, or from a book, or from a movie, or from whatever it might be. So art does definitely inspire, but it doesn't. It's not the root cause of why it's there.
So Harris, is then like the next little thing we got is the first step of invention, imagination? Then is that a fair statement to make?
Oh yeah, creativity has to be part of inventiveness. I would think it's just kind of inherently part of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got like necessity. That's probably a big part of it. They say that's the mother.
Yeah.
But when you then start thinking about how to then create those things.
Yeah.
Harris, did you get beat up by a leprechaun? What the fuck?
No, I dropped in and my entire face just died on me for like 10 minutes.
What
literally.
the hell happened to you? What kind of blunt did you hit?
Out the back.
I think it just got a glass full of eye drop stuff and just went just face.
I did it on screen and I didn't think it was gonna be that bad. And
Oh my
good Lord,
God.
it was like a freaking
It
freight
wasn't-
train.
It wasn't eye drops; it was sulfuric acid.
Yeah, sounds about right.
You couldn't see the bottle, the label on the bottle.
I could barely see y'all when I came back on screen.
Not laughing. We're not laughing.
He's killed himself. He's
pretty
killed
funny.
himself.
God, it looked like he just got beat up. Like, I don't know.
I guess that's what 3.5 hours of sleep and then popping some eye drops in does. Do you? Case and we did our little scientific hypothesis right here.
That was one hell of a rough night. Don't do that again.
Yes, it's fun. Bless him. I was going to say though that with like in science fiction writers and things, so obviously they're imagining the future. They're trying to think, and is that like a natural state that's like always kind of done that? Actually, back in 2010, 26% of all new books were science fiction. So it's a massively important genre. It's what people think about, you know. Is it something we've always done? Do you think? It's like think about the next day. I mean, you could talk about religion and get all sorts of very philosophical on this if you wanted to, but is that fair?
This has been going on throughout history. I mean, who was it? I think it's like Michelangelo or something. Literally drew up sketches for a propulsion device, a helicopter. It is what we know as a helicopter now.
And a submarine and
he
all
didn't
sorts.
invent a helicopter. Someone else invented it, but he dreamt it up. He dreamt up the idea one day, he drew it, and then obviously that gave inspiration to someone hundreds and hundreds of years down the line.
Well, you know, similarly, geosynchronous orbit. Are you guys familiar with the idea of geosynchronous orbit?
Yeah, the satellite stays above the same point.
Right. You know, so the planet's here, and we launch a satellite that's so high up that as it rotates, it stays right on top of a spot on Earth. That's most of your communication satellites are that because you don't want them. In the past, they were all geosynchronous. Now we've got constellations of satellites that are even better. But Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction writer, came up with that idea in the 40s, 1945, I believe, at Wire World or something, some sort of wireless world in 1945 in that issue, and he came up with this idea. And he's a science fiction writer, you know. So then, you know, the science guy, the military guys, probably. I wonder if that would work, you know. And that is all on him. A sci-fi writer came up with that, and it was the backbone of. It still is the backbone of all of our communications on planet Earth these days.
Yeah. I said there that, you know, he basically foresaw satellites, iPads, the internet, exploring the solar system, even though you could argue that was been written before him. But at what point did you have to start wondering whether Arthur C. Clarke was a pig in time traveler? The man had really foresaw 50 years ahead of his life.
Yeah.
He was writing it. And nobody had really seriously thought about putting objects in space like that before him, even though we had seen I can't remember the name of the book now. But Jules Verne wrote about going to the moon, didn't he, and things like this in rocket ships and things. But
yeah,
but a giant firework basically is the way he saw it. But and obviously you've got that old Chinese proverb about the guy that put a load of fireworks onto his chair because he wanted to get into space or wanted to get to the moon and blew up. I don't think, is that a real story or was that just a made up story? I forget. I can't remember if it was a proverb or not. But anyway, but we've always looked up, though, haven't we, and tried to go that bit further.
Yeah, men will always dream. Men will always come up with not just men. I'm not saying men.
No, only men.
The males. Men will always dream, and women will always imagine and come up with ideas, and then other men will come along, or women. I'm inclusive.
Women
will come along. Will come along and make those dreams a reality. That's always going to happen, and I think that's amazing. I could come up with an idea right now. I could say something, and in 100 years' time, not that anyone's going to watch Star Trek in 100 years' time, but someone might, and then they'll go, "Oh, Matt made that lovely point. I'm going to make that a reality." Like the idea that could happen I love it.
The idea of thinking that something can happen, though, is very different to then actually, obviously, making it happen, isn't it? Because anybody can come up with that $1 billion idea. And say, okay, that's a great idea. That's fantastic. Yes, people would like to be able to eat pizza and not gain weight. How are we going to do it? And that's the
a lot of discoveries like that happen by accident. Like a lot of technology emerges because they're working on something, and then something else happens, and they go, "Oh, maybe we can use that for something else." Or they're studying something and they study the effects of what that thing is doing, and then that recreate it, and then the new technology is born. I don't think necessarily they always set out. I mean, sometimes they do. I mean, people are trying to cure cancer right now. That's a good example of setting out to achieve a goal. But a lot of discoveries in the past weren't, I'm going to set out to invent the light bulb. Like Thomas Edison, I don't think he set out to do that. He was doing experiments and then accidentally, maybe not accidentally because he had a method of what he was doing, but he invented the light bulb through his methodology or whatever that might have been.
Because there was a race to invent.
Thomas Edison was a bad idea because it was Nikola Tesla that created it in the first place. But
there's about 20 different people that between them are
yeah,
apparently. And you could argue that Edison just went to the patent office and went, that, and that. Patent that for me. Thank you very much. And danced off to the presidency. But that's a different argument. But this is one for you, Stormy, I'm thinking. Has sci-fi led us to being to be disappointed by the actual reality? Because obviously our Stormy builds spaceships for a living, which is, very cool.
And not once has he invited us.
Not once.
All I want to do is go into space, man. By the way, Harris, can you just wave or something every so often so I remember you there? So I remember to ask you to speak.
Do I look alive?
You look
alive.
Better.
Looks better than a blank screen. So I remember to introduce you. But a big conspiracy theory at the moment, right, is that we've already been to the moon and things, and we're already mining it, and there's a load of. I'm going to use, because I actually work in mental health a little bit, so I'm going to use the technical term now. Nutters believe that we're already on Mars, we're already in thing, we're using alien technology and all this sort of thing. Right? So then we
right when I'm taking a sip, nutters.
So we're then going to do things like the Orion project, and we're going to put an orbiting base around the moon in the next few years. We're going to return to the moon and hopefully then go on to Mars. But the technology basically is exactly the same. It's refined. It's better. Don't get me wrong. The metals are better, blah, blah, blah. But it's still, big fire, go up sort of thing. But in science fiction, has science fiction sort of made us all think that actually more is possible than actually is? Does that make sense?
Maybe more possible than we could think of now.
what was it? Was it 1960 something or another? Arthur C. Clarke wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey, I can't remember what year that was. Anyway, a lot of the things in Space Odyssey, and then of course the film was made after that. But it was the 60s when that, I think it was the 60s when that came out. There were a lot of things in 2001 that we're still discussing today. I mean, the ethics of AI. Oh, let's see. Still trying to find the date the book came out, not the movie. But right now, we're discussing, I mean, every day on the news, there's the ethics of AI. Will AI take over? And
I hope so.
Oh, yeah. So it was 1951. The Sentinel was the name of the original story. And then Kubrick got the rights and made, called it 2001 Space Odyssey. But yeah, it was from the Sentinel. And that was 1951, fellas. 1951 is when that was. And here, almost 75 years later, now we have Chat GPT. Now we are really discussing the moral applications of AI.
Mm-hmm.
And here we, in the Sentinel, we had, AI on a spaceship on a murder spree.
70 something years ago.
Yeah. And so I think there are visionaries, right? There's your visionaries, and then there were sci-fi writers that were good visionaries. Because just because you're a visionary doesn't mean you can write shit. You're not very good. You don't have a grasp at storytelling. But some of these guys were on it. Like for our healthcare disaster, at least here in America, was really kind of illustrated in the book Gateway by Frederick Pohl. And that was, I don't know how many years ago.
Jay's muted himself.
I stopped listening for a second because I was eating a crisp. Where were we?
How was the crisp?
It was lovely. It was a bit spicy, actually.
Oh, spicy taco.
I got hot Doritos, but I got a very, very hot one. All the chili was on one damn crisp. The rest of me rubbish. I had a beer, by the way, because the sun's come out, and I had 2 beers in the fridge I'd forgotten about. I was like, beer.
So, 1977 is when Frederick Pohl wrote Gateway. And it's about us finding abandoned spaceships in a polar orbit of the sun. But in the 2 main things I loved about the book that I think are what was predicting, the American disaster known as healthcare, was how it was represented in the book. Everybody was poor, and really, your whole life was dedicated to get Blue Cross. Well, you had to get that insurance plan. But if you're really fucking rich, you get Blue Cross Plus. So if you lose an arm, you find some poor person, you pay them however much money, you take their arm, put it on you. And as the trilogies go on, the healthcare plan becomes.
How far off do you think, particularly if Trump becomes president, how far off do you think is that for America? 10 years?
You used the T word again.
I was like,
I didn't say it. The Brits said it. Now I got to go speak up some shit about Margaret Thatcher.
If any Republican gets in, how far off do you think America is off that?
Well, have you seen Mitch McConnell lately?
That man needs a whole new thing. I always think he looks like a heffalump.
He looks like a turtle. look at him very closely. It's a turtle. He's like an ancient tortoise.
I saw this meme this morning, and it was just genius. It was there was the guy sitting at a table outside, sipping coffee, and it says something changed my mind. Well, here was that guy with the head of Mitch McConnell, and it was just blank. Changed my mind. It was just
I'm not
horrible.
Sure. He's a very old man.
But
have you seen that movie? It's a sci-fi movie. It's actually a good one, starring Justin Timberlake. and it was something in time, I think it was called.
Yeah, where it's
And it had that pretty Gollum lady in it.
yeah.
Big eyes.
Big eyes.
Very pretty. Looks like Gollum. And that was basically that everybody lived forever because of a new drug. So time was the only thing that really like mattered. So you were paid in time, and then he finds somebody that's got like 100,000 years on his, because he's wealthy, and that's the basis of wealth, as if you've how much time you've got. And I just thought that was such a clever thing, because we're actually moving towards having medication in the future now that will basically eliminate old age, because the body wants to repair itself. It stops doing that at a certain point, and we start to age. But in theory, there's nothing to say that we can't turn that genetic marker off. And I did see something about a couple of weeks ago, basically saying that this one research team thinks they're about 5 years away from being able to do it. The world becomes a very different place all of a sudden if we stop aging.
Are you referring to Brian Johnson's team? Have you heard of Brian Johnson? He's a billionaire, I believe, that is dedicated to keeping himself de-aged at the moment. He is, I think, like 48 or 50 and has like the metabolic structure of a 22-year-old, something like that. He announces this stuff all the time.
Oh, is this the dude that does all these really weird, like, he does like fasting, and he does all these different like things to lower his metabolic age?
A lot of things like that, but he also
medications and stuff.
Yeah, he takes like 130 supplements a day or something wild like that. That might even be like a low number for him. But it's insane. Him, his son, who's a little younger than me, I believe, and then his dad are all doing the same thing. And his dad's like 70s or 80s, and I think he's supposed to have the metabolic structure of like a 40-year-old or something like that. I don't know exactly.
I believe that it's very important to have very good health, and that your body is a temple, and you should be really careful what you put into it, because you get ill. It's like, I'm going to live forever.
Is that gay Budweiser?
No, it's just Budweiser.
Just Budweiser.
I was going to get Bud Light just to annoy people, but I thought about not. I'd forgotten I had them. It's great. I went in the fridge. Oh my god, where'd they come from? I forgot I had them.
I put them back. I have a can of Foster's in my fridge that I left a job when I worked at Tesco like a year and a half ago. They gave me a crate of Foster's, and I've been slowly giving them away to my father-in-law every time he comes around. I've got one can left. I hate it. I feel the same way about Bud that I do about Foster's.
Fizzy wee Foster's.
So in terms of DNA structure and changing your DNA and metabolic rates and so forth, there's another sci-fi novel that touched on it. It's a little bit more modern novel, and by modern I mean 1992. It's it's called Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson, and in that humanity goes to Mars, starts a colony. There's conflict, but one of the scientists, he's been, working on this problem, the longevity. I mean, you're not immortal because you can still get killed by getting in front of a traveling bus. But he talks about these rats he's been working on, and this guy comes and said, "Well, how old are these?" He says, "Well, these rats here are 15 years old." And then it becomes this on Earth. This technology transferred from Mars to Earth. And then it becomes a human right. Then everybody gets a shot. It's called the shot, not the jab, which was a COVID thing. But anyway, they get the shot. And in it, they talk about people are so desperate for this. Is the centers that they administer the shot, people will go and camp out for weeks just so they won't miss their place in line. And
thank you, Gary.
And one thing about Kim Stanley Robinson is his ability to make the scientists the heroes, And there's other things that came along with this treatment that mitigated overpopulation, like restricting childbirth, et cetera, that you had to agree to if you did get the shock. But
I genuinely believe that we should just stick with our generation and not bother with any more. We just get a medication that makes us stop aging, and in Stormy's case, reverses it significantly.
Let's do that retrograde shit. Yeah.
Harris has got a few years yet of growing. He can still grow up a little bit. Yeah. But then just don't bother with any more.
Harris just needs antihistamine, I think.
Yeah, I was like, my kids really should be the one.
Did take on my laptop.
Bloody modern technology. We're as good as it's going to get, guys. Let's not bother. I just think that the world, if we all stopped aging, man, the world would be ridiculously. Well, I can't even imagine it. It's one of those things that you see. Sci-fi Quest, thank you very much. Becoming a new member, thank you very much, sir. I think our mortality makes us. I just think it's important because when you're a teenager, you have no definition of mortality, right? You think you're going to live forever. You think you're absolutely invincible, and that's going to go on. And that's why I think most teenagers are complete pricks. And then, you start to get a bit older and you start to realize that there is a mortality, and you grow up and you calm down a little bit and you start being a bit more careful and you start paying into a pension pot, which just makes me want to cry. But you have to do these things. But if I was still there, generally believed, if I didn't age, I just think our culture and everything would just stagnate. And it would be horrific. It'd just be a bunch of teenagers running around. That'd be World War III and we'd all be dead within a week. If that happened, it's not gonna happen. So when we're talking about science and generally what's possible in the universe, okay? So like for example, like flying cars or the hoverboard in
Back to the Future 2,
and things like this, that stuff. And people, I genuinely think sometimes people genuinely think these things are possible, and that when we then talk about going back to the moon, people go, "Well, that's easy." And I do think maybe science fiction has an influence on that because we watch these things on TV and we watch these things and so and then we think the engineering of that is doable, even though our computers today are way more powerful than anything we ever saw in Star Trek. It just seems that there seems to be that in there maybe the not so educated, there's this attitude of, well, that's easy. Why is it so hard?
Well, it's not to be devil's advocate or anything, but it isn't that hard. I mean, space is hard. Let me just say, because it's a pain in the dick for engineering. That said, we did it 50 years ago. And it's not that we can't do these things. It's we don't want to pay for them. I mean, we could have, we stopped going to the moon at Apollo 17. We had already had the hardware built for 18, 19, and 20. It was the Apollo program was supposed to be a 20 mission program. And we already had the hardware built. If you want to see what the remnants of it, just go to, air and space museums around the world. And there's the big Titan, there's the lunar lander. And all this shit's in museums now because we had it built, didn't use it. Richard Milhouse, dickhead Nixon canceled the moon program. So we could have gone back 20 times, 20 more times if we'd rolled that over. There are already plans for the next generation of rocket, the Saturn VI. And there was already plans. I mean, this was an engineered vehicle already. And there was plans as, the next step. I mean, back in those days, it was on the news. The next step is Mars. We had already decided we were going to go to Mars before Apollo 17. We'd already committed ourselves intellectually and emotionally that, America is going to Mars next because fuck yeah, space. But we didn't because there wasn't the political will.
What's the element, though, that there's also the realization that why are we going? Other than the expansion of knowledge and exploration. I think in the 60s, was there I know we're going back to money again. Was there a financial reason to go to the moon, Mars, beyond?
Was there a financial reason to go?
Well, today I say today we do because we want to mine the crap out of it.
I would say, well,
minerals.
It was the financial realities of space travel and going to space. That was discussed all the time, and we always saw it as a profitable endeavor because the things you get out of it. I mean, all the things we're talking about mostly today, the technology existed because of the absolute shit ton of money we spent on the space program. All of those soon trickled out and spun off into technologies that we use today. And we built on top of that. And if you do the critical analysis of it, NASA is the only department in the United States government that actually makes money. That doesn't get to keep the money. That goes into the Treasury, and then Congress wastes it on fossil fuels or some bullshit. But yeah, there's always been the financial use case, and especially in terms of land to settle or surface area, planetary surface area to settle. But yeah, the use case for the financial part was always right there. But Nixon was Nixon. I don't even know what's going on in Jason. There's some sort of slurping, chewing, or going over. Oh, it's
you made me think while you were saying all that. I don't know if there was necessarily a financial reasoning for them to do things besides obviously the beginning of the Cold War. We have this kind of space race, and there are all these things going on. These things are just being spoken in the public all across the globe, and we're kind of putting things out there that we have to follow up on. After the fact, the Cold War still goes on for 25, 30 years after we get to space.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily we go back to space frequently, but we don't go to space and land on the moon, attempt to go to Mars. We're not even trying to go to Venus or anything like that. We're not trying to establish more bases on the moon. It's more like, okay, we got our International Space Station. Why would they
found on the moon? They found aliens on the moon, and the aliens told them never to come back.
And then they made a documentary, and that was what became the Transformers movie.
I thought it was gonna be Moonfall for a second.
No, Transformers movie.
I love Elon.
Yeah.
Well, it's been 30, 40 years since we've actually been on the moon, right? And then India just went to the moon.
India just landed a robot on the moon this last week.
Yeah, that's right.
We have landed stuff on the moon before, but yeah, it's been a while since we've
since a human, I guess, set foot.
Well, that was 60, 70 something, so yeah, 50 years. But the reason is that now that obviously we have this need. There's metals that go in our batteries. We really, really need batteries. We're going to run out of it. We have to go and get it somewhere else. There are metals that we desperately need. We're going to have to go out and get it. We're going to have to mine the meteor belts and the Mars and the moon and everything else and get all this. There's crap loads of titanium on the moon, for example. There's loads of it. And it's quite reasonably easy to get to. So I'm not sure the technology existed to actually mine anything back in the 60s and 70s. That technology is getting better now and we could. I think there's a financial reason now.
Just need a pickaxe.
Exactly. Spacesuit, axe, spade. Done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we did mining on the moon. I mean, that's exactly how they chipped off these rock samples. They had mining tools.
Yep.
A couple of weeks ago, I was at the New Mexico Museum of Space History, and they had one of those shock-resistant mining picks on display. Yep. It's awesome.
Amazing. Popcorn Plants said the metals will always be easy to mine on here. That's the problem, isn't it? There's some of the metals we're talking about are quite exotic, and they just don't exist here. It's not to get them. Is it they reckon? Is it what's it in batteries? Lithium. We've got about 100 years worth at today's rate of use. We've got about.
We're running out of silicon as well.
And cobalt, right?
That's why there's a big shortage. Chip
oh my God, my head's exploding. We're not running out of silicon. The Earth's crust is 25% silicates. If we run out of that, we're living in lava fields. I mean, we're not running out of silicon.
We're running out of sand that we can use in concrete. Is that what we were talking about?
We're not running out of that either. Just the Gulf of Mexico can provide enough sand for concrete for the next 1,000 years. I don't know.
No, that's not true, because the sand isn't the right sort of. I read up on this a little while ago. The sand's the wrong shape, right? So the sand in the Sahara Desert, they've only very recently figured out how to use it to make concrete because it's sharp and spiky, so you can't use it for concrete. But very recently, somebody figured out how. So the whole thing with sand running out, they think is solved, but it's quite hard. You have to use loads of really quite evasive chemicals and things on it.
And now there's technology to recycle concrete back into its constituent. Anyway,
Yes.
Going back to the thing about mining on Earth is cheaper. That's not true. There's a mission that NASA is planning to what's called an asteroid called Psyche-16. It's probably one of the bigger asteroids in the asteroid belt. It's mostly precious metals. But if you take the average metallic asteroid in the asteroid belt and you go and mine it, and keep in mind that this is almost all pure metal. There's no basalt rock. There's no organics like you find here in or on Earth. One of those average size, largest asteroid you find in the asteroid belt, one of those is equal to about the same amount of metal you would find if you strip mined North America.
Mm-hmm.
Now, which is more costly? Go out, put a robot on a rock in the asteroid belt between here and Mars, put it over to Earth orbit, or mine it there, mine it on Mars, then to strip mine the entirety of North America.
That's the point. No one lives there as well, so you can.
And no one lives there.
There's no environmental concerns if you want to go and set off a couple of nukes on an asteroid somewhere to free up a bunch of, what I mean? You could blast away quite happily, and nobody from Greenpeace is going to turn up. If they do, you're going to tip your hat to them and go, fair play. You got a spaceship and drag yourself all the way over here to complain about our environment. So that's the future.
But what about all the tiny little microbial species that live on the asteroid?
Don't start. Don't go. No, don't get them started, mate. The future is
the Lorax,
because most plastics are based on hydrocarbons. So,
and there's also plenty of hydrocarbons in space.
We can go get hydrocarbons in space. We can make hydrocarbons if we really, really need to, but it's more expensive than just sucking it out.
If I eat beans today, I'm gonna make plenty of hydrocarbons.
The world was predicted to run out of oil. People keep saying that we're going to run out of oil, and then there was a myth that went around last year that said we're not going to run out of oil because the Earth makes more, and it's not true. But we will not run out of oil. What we will do, though, is it will become so expensive to get to the oil that is left. It becomes just ridiculously expensive. But we have technology's improved. So about 20, 30 years ago, they said we had 50 years left. Because they found a few more oil reserves and the technology's improved, they think we've still got about 50 years left before it starts getting complicated, of proven reserves that we can actually get to. And then somebody might think of a new way of sucking it up cheaply, and we might go a bit further, but it's the cost. At the end of the day, we've got the easy stuff. We're now starting to suck out the hard stuff, and as it gets more difficult, it gets more complicated. Simple as that. 1 second. Oh, sorry.
So what we need is a massive straw, and everyone just get on one end, and we just suck as hard as we can. Everyone, and if one person doesn't suck hard, then we fail. So you've all got to suck as hard as we can.
Yeah, I know, and then we'd all be fine, wouldn't we? What we basically need is to suck harder, damn it. But to go back to that, then is there really a point that is sci-fi related to why people think that we're able to do more than is actually realistic? That because we see all these amazing things in science fiction.
Because you see things in science fiction like, I mean, this probably would happen in real life, but I think this is why it's in people's head. If an asteroid was heading towards Earth and their only hope is to build a rocket and send it up to deflect the asteroid, in the movies they do it like within the space for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, right? And yes, if that was happening in real life, they probably would have a rocket they could do. But I think that's why people think it's so easy, because like, well, you can do it if you really, really, really wanted to. But those are special circumstances, like
If we
dire circumstances, like a last resort. We pool all the resources together and we just make it happen. Kind of circumstances.
Threw everything into it. I think we're capable of doing like science fiction level stuff. Is it that there is either there's no need to, or it costs too much? But actually, yeah, if there's a meteorite about to hit the planet and we had to, I think we're capable of a shitload of stuff. Stormy, one thing I think genuinely interested in this the stuff that we're capable of doing, particularly in space travel. I've always wondered if the one thing that's holding us back is a power source, and that if we had a better way of dragging energy with us, that we would actually be capable of doing like near sci-fi things. The reason why we still use rockets, though, is because we don't have a way of generating enough energy safely.
Didn't someone actually design a warp drive? Like the design, how it would work, which the only thing to stopping them was the power source.
Based on taking that much mass and putting it down to the size of a pinprick, but
what you're talking about is reaction versus reactionless engines. Everything that runs in space is reaction. You provide some sort of force. Let's say you have a rocket and you want to move the rocket one way or another. You have to have a blast of some sort of matter changing the deflection as you travel. So in the blast, you just got to have that reaction force. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. But what we're looking for, and there's been a lot of progress in this area, is a reactionless space motor, space engine. And ironically, I think the biggest advances in that's come from CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, better understand of how quarks work. If you look on an atomic scale, the universe is mostly empty. You may in a square meter, you may have, or cubic meter of just vacuum space, you may have one single atom of hydrogen. It's very, very empty. But at the quantum level, it's densely packed with shit. I mean, and that's one thing that we really have discovered recently, in human terms, recently, is how densely packed space is with quantum matter. And so now, if we can figure out a way how to push against the quantum matter that's there, then we can come up with reactionless engines and skedaddle about as fast as we want.
Because until we figure that out, we're stuck with propulsion nonetheless, right?
Yeah, we're stuck with chemical propulsion.
Even if we were able to get like a nuclear reactor small enough to put into like a ship or something like that, it would still have to be propulsion to a degree, right?
Yes. Answering Sci-Fi Questions question, yes, it's powerful enough to propel a craft.
We've already got satellites that have ion drives, don't we?
Yeah, the first one, there was the first experiment NASA did was a space probe called Deep Space One, named after our favorite Star Trek series. And what it does, it kind of strips away the electrons from an atom and thrusts it out. The thing about ion engines is that it's very slow acceleration.
Yeah.
But it lasts a long time. So the force of an ion thruster is about the same force as a piece of paper resting on your hand. It's not very much force at all, but it doesn't turn off. And so it goes and goes and goes. Whereas a regular chemical rocket like SpaceX or Lockheed or whoever, it'll just turn on and it'll just blast, just go and go for about 90 seconds or maybe 2 or 3 minutes. You get minutes worth. But with ion thrusters, you have years and sometimes decades worth. It just needs a little. You're just, if you got something with a lot of atoms on it, and I think usually they're propelled by xenon atoms. There's lots of electrons on a xenon atom, so you're getting the most out of the fuel. but it goes and goes and goes and goes for a very long time. So yeah, there was. I think now we have several spacecraft that uses ion engines, but it's a very limited kind of thing. But you want it for long-term missions. It's not very good for short-term stuff.
We started looking at there's an idea to go to Alpha Centauri, and that's going to use an ion drive.
Yes.
But the idea being basically we're going to send. I saw a debate between two NASA scientists said it's going to take about 50 years to get there, and the other guy was saying, well, but how do you know that we won't come up with something that we'd end up leapfrogging it? So we can end up spending a lot of time and effort to send this satellite that's going to take 50 years to get to this star, and actually, how do we know in 20 years' time we won't do something that can get there in 5 years and beat it by 20 years? You know what I mean? It's like. So they're trying to debate on whether it was even worth doing or not with current technology, or should we wait until the next? And then they went on about all these different technologies they thought could leapfrog it, obviously. But
that'll always be the case, though. Let's just send a bunch of motherships and seed a bunch of planets with solar sails and ion thrusters. Let's do it. Use less energy and just go for it.
Well, that's one of the theories behind it. Why they might be aliens, because is it that I forget the paradox. The guy that came up with it, the paradox, he said, I mean, if a society lasted long enough, even with today's modern technology, we could seed every planet in the solar system given long enough, and we haven't seen that, so that means there aren't any aliens. But
going back to the 50-year issue, in 1977 we launched the Voyager probes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still going, and they've exited the solar system, and that was 50 years ago. So if we can build a probe or a satellite or something that can get to another star system in 50 years, I mean, that's well within our mission lifetime these days. Mm-hmm. If you look at the probes on Mars, they're supposed to last 3 months, and they go for decades because we're just getting really good at that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if it's a 50-year mission, and let's say we do come up with something in 20 years, we could use that technology to leapfrog to the next star system. It doesn't necessarily, we have to go to the same place. Well, we've already got something, and it'll arrive in 30 years. Well, let's go use this new technology that does it in half the time to go someplace else, to leapfrog, to explore farther. Mm-hmm. So I know in terms of space exploration, if we had technology to send a probe to the next star system over in only 50 years, I think it's doable because we've got two probes now that just left the solar system a few years ago, and they're 50 years old.
Yeah,
so I mean, that span is doable.
The lifetime of it is not the real problem. They were arguing whether it's worth doing, but I would argue that if you always wait for the next technology, you'll never do anything.
Exactly.
Just very quickly.
Yeah, it's like, do I get the new iPhone now, or do I wait till
the next
6
one.
months from now?
You never get the next one, would you? Tomorrow never comes, as they say.
Yeah.
So just quickly, sidetrack.co.uk. Don't forget that's our new committed website. That it is. We put stories on there about all of our videos, so please go check that out. Also, please check out the description for links to Matthew's Nerd in the Corner YouTube channel, Harris's channel that we're desperately trying to get in because he does videos way better than we do on this channel, and our Stormy Bear, who has his very educational channel. And if you want to learn how to make hydrogen and blow shit up, actually the FBI might turn up if we talk about that too much. Make hydrogen but not blow anything up. To responsibly use it as an alternative power source in your kit. There are links to that, all of the different channels in the description, and they're also on our affiliated channels thing, aren't they, Matt? That you can scroll down to on the bottom of the page, and they're down there somewhere, aren't they?
Indeed.
Please go over and check all those out while we're on. Right, so we got one more. Oh, we got two more little things to add to the bottom that I wanted to talk about. So, how much are engineers genuinely influenced by science fiction then? If we talked about the mobile phone, we've talked about iPads, we've talked about satellites and all these things that were imagined by science fiction. But is there actually a reality where engineers today are influenced by science fiction? And if so, by how much?
Nowadays, 1,000%.
Totally.
And it's as simple as just saying 3D printers, honestly. because that's going to be the future of all engineering at some point, whether it be bioengineering, actual engineering. We're learning to print food. We're learning to print organs. We're already printing.
You can print houses.
Yeah. I grew up going to church with a dude that lives in Austin that is printing houses and got the contract with NASA or whatever to do that. But it's 3D printing's the future, and if it's that accessible to anybody, as long as you know what coding to put in there and get the thing you want out of it, the only thing stopping you is imagination. Kind of cool.
Here's the this is an alternative theory. We are 3 inventions away from the total collapse of capitalism. Woohoo! Woohoo! So there's 3 things. If you once there's 3 legs of the stool that's propping up capitalism. One is energy. Once we are striving to get make energy free or nil cost. Once you get to, because everything you buy today has energy, the cost of energy built in. It's fossil fuels, renewables, whatever. It is always built in, that cost. But if you can get energy to 0 or nil cost, that collapses many, many industries. But it also democratizes a lot of things that you'll need for the next thing, which would be production. And production is just what Harris just said, is 3D printing. Once you can get to the point of 3D printing objects, you become one step closer to having the replicators in Star Trek. Where if you want food, you just order food. If you want,
just make sure the good replicators in Star Trek, not the bad replicators in Stargate. We just want to clarify that point. 2 very different things.
So if you wanted, self-sealing stem bolts, you can have all you want.
There you go.
And then there's, of course,
to put something into a 3D printer. It's not just a matter of turning it on and it just magics.
I was about to say there's an inherent flaw there.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever get rid of capitalism. Capitalism is just part of the human existence, and I think it's kind of naive to just be like, no capitalism all the time. And I know we love to do that as a society, but literally everything has a market. And
I don't think capitalism's necessarily a human. It's
capitalism started
forever because capitalism hasn't been around that long.
1602 is when capitalism started. 1602.
When cavemen were trading sticks.
That's different. You have commerce in capitalism, socialism, and communism. That's just commerce. Commerce is different from your economic model. I mean, face it. I mean, Indians, the Native Americans, they had commerce. It's a different thing than capitalism.
If there's ambition, capitalism is there, and humans never don't have ambition.
Capitalism is a whole different thing. Capitalism started with the Dutch East India Company. With its model
name to it.
Shareholders. It was a totally different animal. And and of course, what Thomas Jefferson called the Commonwealth. Well, Commonwealth was a much earlier word than socialism. Socialism was a rather more modern word that came after Thomas Jefferson. And but capitalism is easily done away with because it's only hasn't been around for just a few hundred years. Anyway, going back to the thing. So you have energy, and you have production, and then you have housing, things like that. But the thing that it will be the most difficult to do, because there's a finite resource of this on Earth, and that's called arable land. You have to have land. Capitalism requires land to build, land to rent, land to live on, land to produce things. But once you you throw in star travel into it, and you can start colonizing other land. Once you start doing that, all of a sudden the resource of land becomes infinite instead of finite. And there's nothing that can withstand that in terms of capitalism.
I do think
then you're in a post-scarcity economy. And scarcity is what drives capitalism.
I would agree with Harris that I think there is an element of psychology to capitalism that we like. We like we said, if we want to, well, you've always got. We were talking about this the other week, and I'm sorry, I'm going to start again. But in group, out group thinking, and how we want to feel. There's this thing about people's self-identity, and when they were working class in the mines, that they would they did surveys on them, and they recorded as being quite happy. And then the mines closed, and they went into other cleaner workforces, and all of a sudden we had a real problem in the UK, particularly of like mental health issues with men. And the issue they've after several studies, they found out that it was because a lot of these men and women that used to consider themselves working class didn't know who they were anymore.
Yep.
So they didn't, because it was based on that I'm a working class and that's okay because I know who the middle class person is and I know who the upper class person is. And as long as I know what that hierarchy is, then I'm quite comfortable. We now have a world where everybody's middle class and there's a little bit of upper class. And basically everyone else is middle class, and there's a little bit of working, like people on the dole. But mostly we've got this massive middle class section. And nobody knows who they are compared to each other. Capitalism is one way that allows us to do that, and it feeds into that psychology. So I've got the new car. The neighbours only got the 2003 model, and it feeds into that basic psychology that we all have, and that's why we quite like it. As people,
yeah.
And you take that away. That's why communism doesn't work in its purest form. And when they did communism, they had to throw in a pinch of commerce, but capitalism really, because there was still that hierarchy. It's basic human psychology. But I agree with you, Stormy, in that if you get resources become so plentiful and energy becomes virtually free, capitalism, I think, would still be there, but it would be so watered down and so really unimportant that it would be virtually non-existent.
And then once you take manufacturing out of it, then it becomes even more unstable. You keep going down the road until you're left with the only thing you're left with to buy and sell as a commodity is land, because there's only so much of it you can do anything with on Earth. Once you start star travel, all of a sudden land becomes infinite, or available land becomes infinite.
And you could argue, because we've already made money virtual, it doesn't really exist, then we're already halfway there anyway.
And the psychology you're talking about was also existed before 1602. It exists in not just capitalism, but socialism and communism. So it's kind of independent. I mean, the psychology is independent of the monetary policy you have. And, I guess if you ask the Native Americans, capitalism really hasn't worked for them, And in terms of like middle class, I think it's more of these days it's more of a first world feature that does not include the United States.
I think
is quickly vanishing.
We like hierarchy. We like to know where we are in the world. And that's, I think, most successful cultures through history. They've had some sort of system to manage that. We now do it through capitalism. We use capitalism, and that's why we're all such bloody. Amazon does so well, because we're all so desperate to have the next new thing. It all stems from that basic psychology. But anyway.
And you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, the pyramid. Yeah, and once those three things that I just mentioned, we're three inventions away from the collapse of capitalism. Those are the first two layers of Maslow's pyramid. Everything else is kind of, your happiness is kind of up to you, But once you take care of food security, housing security, all that, and education, well,
everything, you build everything else off that. Yeah.
Then you build. Then
emotional needs rather than physical needs. But yeah, so I actually did read a couple of papers. I think you mentioned it earlier, Stormy, about how much engineers are actually influenced by science fiction. And MIT have done loads of studies on this, and they've said basically every year when they look at it, how many when an engineer releases a new report on something, how many times science fiction or science fiction elements are actually mentioned.
Yeah,
and it's increasing steadily. That over now, nearly half of the papers that are released worldwide every year are mentioned something to do with science fiction. So we can argue that engineers are genuinely influenced by the science fiction of the world. So that goes into the next thing I was going to say, was science fiction has molded the world that we live in.
Well, let me finish up the previous thought. Where I was going with all this, but the three inventions of the destroy capitalism. was I know people in Silicon Valley that's working on all three of those problems. Replicator technology, not infinite. Well, yeah, kind of cheap and nil cost energy, cheaper nil cost manufacturing, and space travel. And my opinion is, if Congress had the slightest idea of what is going down in Silicon Valley, they would nuke the site for Morbid. I mean, because the destructive shit
that would be illegal.
That'd be, Congress can make anything illegal.
Space weapon systems.
Well, but seriously, I mean, I know guys in Silicon Valley that's working on all three of these problems, and Congress doesn't have an idea what's going on, not the slightest clue. Half of Congress still doesn't believe there's such thing as climate change, which is
not man-made. That'd be silly.
Matt,
wake up a sec. Matt.
Oh my God, we lost Matt. Matt, are you alive? Earth to Matt.
Science fiction then has molded the world that we live in. No, I would fall asleep during Stormy's rant, just like you fell asleep during my rant on Wednesday. So
I'm good.
You didn't fall asleep, but you looked bored towards the end. But I mean, the modern world that we live in, though, how much of it is molded by sort of not even just science fiction, but our culture, art, all these sort of things? Is there a connection between the two?
I think science fiction often gives us the idea of the perfect world, and through wanting a perfect world, maybe we subconsciously try and adopt some of those ideas and ideologies. That could come into it. There could be a bit of psychology involved in that some way. But yeah, I think because science fiction does give us essentially the perfect world, I think it's only natural that it influences more than just technology, but some of the ideals that some of us have. I mean, the ideals that I have, I would be considered a liberal, I guess. But I attribute that to a lot of science fiction. Not a Lib Dem. Just I'm a liberal thinker. Like
open-minded
open-minded human rights. If there's a debate to be had, I'm on the side of the one that's being oppressed. Essentially, that's generally where I sit on the political scale.
That's why we love
you. But I see a lot of that in science fiction, and I can't help but think that maybe science fiction influenced that in me.
I agree with you. Harrison, science fiction then generally tends to get split into two halves. It tends to be a positive Star Trek future or a dystopian, post-apocalyptic, negative future. Do you think actually both sides can influence in a similar way, that it's not just our hopes but our fears?
Oh, totally. I mean, that every time we bring up AI, I'm always saying, like, give us C-3PO, not Skynet. Like there's different options and avenues that we can take, and we as a people, as a species, can choose to take, I guess, those different options. And I'd rather choose the optimist kind of version most of the time. We tend to fearmonger and scare ourselves into choosing the safest thing that can always just be turned off or switched up, I guess, by a little switch or something. I don't know. But I'd much prefer a C-3PO than a Skynet, and I think that can apply to everything almost. Yeah.
Technology isn't negative or positive. It depends on how you use it, whether it's evil.
Technology is,
True.
So, Stormy, then, I mean, when we're talking about how much sci-fi has influenced us, is it really because I always think is it a chicken and egg type of thing? Is it because sci-fi's influenced us, or because of our hopes and fears influence sci-fi? Because it's an art form at the end of the day.
Well, not a lot of people have looked at the Mona Lisa and decided to go invent something. Even though the art form of painting, and Mona Lisa is kind of up there on the ranks of well-respected art. It maybe inspires some sort of emotion, but it doesn't really inspire moving humanity forward in terms of technology. There are, science fiction is an art form that has in its ability to move humanity forward, whether it's through invention or ideas or something, but pushing humanity forward seems to be the thing that we get as a side effect in humans when we read science fiction. And I think that's different from like fantasy books, which shows what humans can do in terms of heroics and empathy and really good potato soup recipes. You know what I mean?
Second breakfast.
Yeah. Second breakfast. But so I think you're right. I mean, I think sci-fi. And I'm not just using sci-fi as in books. And sci-fi as in books and film and just singular pieces of art. I think can inspire us, or it can dislodge our curiosity in a way that is really mind-opening. I remember seeing the first Star Wars poster at the local theater, and I marveled at it. I mean, it was just, oh my God. And it was just a single picture, so it wasn't, this is not just a movie. My mind was really blown when I saw the film. But, it really does it really does trigger us what's possible. Where can we go? What we can achieve when we work together, and what we can destroy when we don't.
I think a lot of modern sci-fi, though. I think there's a lot of negativity in sci-fi, and in a lot of media at the moment. To be honest, there's a lot of doom and gloom. I mean, Matt, you watch as much TV as I do, and you read. Is there a darker future ahead at the moment? I mean, because if science fiction does tend to reflect where we're going, and it has done a lot in the past, does that mean we should be maybe more worried about the future than we have been in the past?
I don't know. I don't necessarily think when we see doom and gloom, it's a reflection of what's actually happening in the world. I think it's the opposite. When things are happy in the world, or at least not dire, we see more doom and gloom. When things are a little bit more doom and gloom, we see things that are more happy. So, I don't know. Maybe we are in for some more doom and gloom. Who knows? But then we'll get some more happy sci-fi. So
swings and roundabouts.
Swings and roundabouts, yeah.
So there we go. I think I just think it's fair to say that the world has been science fiction. Really, I think is a window into the world we live in. Because I think we can talk about the positive, we can talk about the best and the worst of humanity through a metaphor, and I think that's why we love it so much, because we can actually have these conversations in ways that we can't in other media. And that's one of the reasons why I think science fiction has influenced the world that we live in uncountable ways. It's seeped into ourselves, and as well, a lot of geeks love sci-fi, and then they go and build stuff. So it's going to have been a massive influence. So
Secular Monk has a really good take on all of that.
Mm-hmm.
We should be worried about the future. I mean, we're wrecking the planet. Our society is too concerned about arguing over cultural issues that ultimately do not matter. Science fiction is a way to show how it could be. That's exactly true. It's we're so worried about the Bible verses that the Kardashians are reading this week, and really, well, we've had, how many hurricanes are in the Atlantic right now? I mean, I've lost track. I think Western Canada is still on fire. We're just not talking about it because the other places are on fire. We're talking about the flooding. We're talking about the insane heat waves. We're talking about, water disappearing from where it used to be for tens of thousands of years. And the things we should be worrying about that we can easily fix, we're just not. Because, oh my God, I saw 2 girls kissing at the Burger King. It's the end of the world. Jeez.
At the Burger King?
There was 2 chicks kissing at the local Burger King, and it didn't ruin my day. I'm just saying.
It didn't ruin your day? That would perk my day right up.
I was about to say I'm going to Burger King in 20 minutes now.
Yeah, it did not ruin my day at all. There was no ruination by observing 2 girls, kissing in the Burger King. It was just a peck of a cheek thing. Just come on, you didn't have pants off or anything. I did though. That was beside the point.
Yeehaw, hot dog, give me some sugar.
Yeah, but we're so wrapped up in that kind of bullshit, right? I live on the border of the United States and Mexico, and you look on TV, you expect that tens of millions of people hoarding across the border into New Mexico, and it's just not true.
There are. I've seen them on the news.
It's the border is 45 minutes from here. I go down. I'm in El Paso all the time, and it's just there's tourists. You know what the biggest Okay, so there's this one crossing, a pedestrian bridge going from El Paso into Juarez, Mexico. Do you know what most of the people are? It's old fucks like me crossing the bridge to go to the pharmacies in Mexico to buy dirt cheap pharmaceuticals and then coming back. We go down, get our 90-day supply, come back, all's well. We are the ones invading Mexico. Old farts like me.
Canada.
That's the way around. And we do.
A while ago, the Canadian, was it the Canadian Prime Minister when he was saying he came out and said we're gonna build a wall because we're sick of the Americans coming over here and getting all the pharmacy and cheap booze and stuff and then pissing off back to America. So maybe we should be thinking about building a wall.
I can't blame you. We should be sealed off.
No, but that's the problem. Is that I think there's a lot of division in the United States at the moment. It's really
pointless,
challenging, and a lot of it is pointless. When did a bunch of Christians stop believing in like love thy neighbor, and that that actually that we should like forgive and stuff and things like this? And when did Christianity become so angry? And people, it always seems to be people that they're hardened Christians. God is in my heart, but they're angry about everything. And I'm pretty sure Jesus was only pissed off if somebody's rights were being trampled on or if somebody was being taken advantage of. Other than that, he seemed pretty chill.
Yeah, the only time he was really angry is when the bankers were in the church.
Exactly.
I'm not religious, but it seems unfair to just put it on one religion. It's everybody, whether you're religious, not religious, doesn't care. It doesn't matter what you believe, who you believe in, what you're. Everyone's.
Well, that's true. Organized religion really doesn't have a great track record.
Oh, no, it doesn't. I'm not trying to keep up for it, but everyone's busy.
Yeah, in America, Christianity is has all the political power.
That's the only reason I'm bringing up Christianity, because at the moment it seems to be very loud Americans banging their chest for Christianity, terrified of everything and hating everything, and it just seems to be. But it is a very loud minority. I think I'd like most Christians don't. They believe in what they believe in, but they don't use it to batter somebody else. It just seems to be there's a loud minority at the moment that seem to want to batter everyone else. And don't get me wrong, it's the same for every religion on the planet. There is always going to be that secular, that very angry side to it. Any group you're going to get. Yeah. Even in political parties, you get the left and the right wing within every party, and hopefully it's the conservatives, and we're like, oh god, the lefties are coming, and the bulk of the Conservative Party are very sensible, thoughtful people, but there's a loud minority that make the whole party look bad. The Labour Party is the same. There's a very loud right wing. You've got the same in the Republicans and the Democrats.
But you're tossing an entire religion into one category of politicalization as well. I'm from the Bible Belt. Nobody talks or acts like that there. They haven't. My entire I know I'm not old, but 25 years of living, no one talks like that. I come from 120,000 person town, not the biggest, not the smallest. I've been to the 300 person cities, 3 million person cities, all throughout Texas, all throughout the South. Every state there, no one talks like that. That is a characterization made by news people on both sides. It's just not.
That loud minority, though. Then that's what I'm trying to say. Though,
But it's not even the loud minority. It's
louder than everyone
the
else.
Perception of it, I guess.
Going back to what
minority. I just don't want to make you think that I'm sort of dissing some or anybody. Like it's what I'm trying to say is when you've got a loud minority shouting, the perception is that it covers that whole group because they're the one shouting all the time, and that's going to color a whole group regardless of. I know exactly what you're saying.
But to single them out, I think is where I'm just like, let's not single them out because there's a loud minority on the other side that are doing the exact opposite, but the exact same thing, and they're just as bad for the world.
Every group on the planet is the same. The only reason I mentioned Christianity is because we were talking about America.
Yeah, and anyway, let me go back to something Popcorn Power said. If Jay's perception of angry Christian Americans were true, they would not be gay marriage legalized in the United States. Clarence Thomas, in his decision to outlaw abortion, in his opinion, he wrote, "Those are the things that are next." And there is the next thing we call them the Christian Taliban here in America. Those the really loud out people that really do not practice anything written in the Sermon on the Mount, is to get rid of birth control, not just birth control for emergency contraception, but birth control period. That's already working its way through the courts in several states. We're already banning books that talk about slavery. We're banning books. We're banning classroom instruction that talks about slavery. And this is from the Christian, the far right wing militarized Christian movement in America. And gay marriage is on the right's agenda to get rid of. I mean, that was in Clarence Thomas's statements from the bench. That's on the agenda.
When gay marriage was legalized in the United States, several states then moved to make it illegal.
Yeah.
And then my understanding is the Supreme Court then had to step in and actually ban states banning gay marriage. So they had to actually step in and go, no, you can't. Yeah. Isn't there a similar problem going on with it? That's basically what's going on with abortion at the moment, isn't it? That basically states are creating laws they're not allowed to ban abortion, but what they have to do instead is make it so difficult to get an abortion it's virtually illegal.
No, they can totally ban abortion.
They couldn't. Aren't they looking at actually overturning Roe versus Wade at the moment?
They did. Roe versus Wade is dead.
Yeah. There you go.
It's been dead.
So,
but yeah, I think when all this started, now there's always a radical Christian movement in America that started after the Civil War, and that was really manifested in the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, which saw they were just pissed off that blacks were free. America's greatest sins are included in its founding documents. I mean, we legalized slavery in the Constitution. We outlined our first national enemy as savage Indians. I mean, genocide is right there in our founding documents. And so a lot of those people that signed those documents were Christian, and they loved them some slavery. So in terms of not all, I'm not saying this is all Christians, but the people, the landowners, the people that could legislate this stuff, definitely, did so because of Jesus. But when it really became, when political power really, at least in modern times, really came to a head in terms of religion, I think that's at the feet of Newt Gingrich, the House Speaker during the Clinton administration. Mm-hmm. Really sought division and militarization of a religious movement to change secular America. And I think it started with Newt Gingrich.
Yeah. I know what that comment is about, and I hate you. Can we ban Klopp, please? Sorry, Declan Rice just scored about Man United, so we've lost. Last minute of the game. I think that the point is about we're talking about loud minorities and blah, blah, blah. I think cruel, greedy, spiteful people will always find an excuse to be cruel, greedy, and spiteful. and whether that be a religion, capitalism, the word woke, whatever it is they want to hide behind, they will always try to justify being cruel, greedy, and spiteful. And it doesn't matter what color you are, what religion you are, whatever it is, they will find that thing. And I think there's a big problem in America, though, that there are a few cruel, spiteful people that are hiding behind whatever flag it is they're hiding behind. And they always will. And we have to try to fight against that where we can. Because most people aren't cruel, spiteful, and greedy.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
But you're going to unfortunately get a small number of people that just seem to be louder than the rest of us. And what is it? What was I saying? That when does evil win is when good men fail to act, and that happens far too often. Far too often, people just don't stand up when something's being done wrong. Anyway. Well, this conversation went way off base. I mean, What have you been watching? We've got 5 minutes. Anybody been watching anything good this week? I've only been watching Stargate Atlantis, so I'm out of this conversation.
Let's see.
Walking Dead.
Started Walking Dead.
I'm
Still on it.
Walking Dead. Yeah.
Foundation and Stargate SG-1.
Oh, you started.
We're hip deep in the Ori now.
See, I still was watching Stargate Atlantis, and I could not understand why the Apollo didn't have energy weapons. Because surely the whole last season of SG-1, the 304s had energy weapons. I know it was only like the Daedalus and but they had energy weapons. And then so the Apollo was built and launched at the end of Arc of Truth. Was the first time we saw the Apollo, and then they immediately sent it to the Pegasus galaxy, the least armed vessel in the fleet.
Off it goes.
It doesn't make sense to me at all. I don't understand it. But I suppose they had to, from a storyline point of view, they couldn't be too powerful straight away. We were just battered the space vampires. But anyway, right. But anyway, how about you, Harris? What have you been watching this week? What have you seen in the cinema, sir?
Well, not much in the cinemas. I have seen one new movie this week because their Equalizer 3 was really the only big movie out, and I haven't seen the second half of Equalizer 2, so I need to catch up a little bit, so I didn't go see that. I did see Bottoms, which, have y'all heard anything about this movie at all?
No.
It is the funniest movie of this year. Bottoms. It is titled Bottoms. It is these two lesbian girls. They weren't in Burger King. Don't worry.
Correct.
I mean,
go ahead.
It was the funniest freaking movie I've seen this entire year, and maybe in a long time. The premise is these two girls. They're both lesbians. They're in high school, probably later in high school. They have these couple girls that they really like, and they're just too scared to talk to them. They're best friends, so they're not like in a couple or like a relationship or anything. They're just best friends. And I guess they bond over being lesbian and all these different things, yada yada. But
I'm lesbian. Let's be friends.
Let's be friends. But they've been best friends for a long time. It's really funny. Punky Johnson is in there just for a little bit, and she plays their lesbian Yoda, is what they call her. It's the funniest thing in the world. The premise of it is these two girls feel ostracized, so they are trying to find a way to get the attention of the two girls they do like. Manchester United just had something bad happen.
Oh God.
No. But okay, so the two girls they're working up their schemes, and their scheme to get the girls' attention, and they're going after like the two most popular girls in school. Like the one girl's dating the football quarterback, and the other one's the girl's best friend kind of deal. The premise of the movie is to get those two girls' attention. They start a fight club, a female fight club in the school.
Oh my God.
And the teacher they get to become their like sponsor is Marshawn Lynch, the old football player. Beast mode, the beast mode, that guy. And it is I couldn't stop laughing for 2 hours or hour and a half. It was great. I had no idea what to expect going into it. I've thought about it every minute since. It's been great.
Yeah, if there's a film about lesbians, I'd think about it a lot afterwards as well.
Not for the reasons. It's more like some dismemberment and a lot of other things. It's a very enjoyable film. It's not what you'd expect it to be ever.
I saw somebody talking about this a few weeks before it came out. Actually, they're saying this is the strangest film they'd ever seen. And I'm saying there's been some pretty strange films. I go with anything by Waika Tatiti before Ragnarok, and there's strange fucking film.
Is this in the theaters?
Yeah.
Is this what?
Is this in the theaters or is it on?
Yes, it came out on Thursday.
Oh my god!
And it is so good, y'all. I mean, I could recommend it.
It's got to go on my list.
It's a little independent film. It might not be at every theater, but it's at enough, and it's hilarious. If Frank versus Russia made you laugh, this will make you laugh. Besides that, What We Do in the Shadows finished, and that it finished perfectly. It's not the season, I guess, and then Only Murders in the Building also had an amazing episode this week, and I was very happy. Yeah,
really good. My favorite show. My favorite show live at the moment, like new show sort of thing. It's my favorite show.
I love Only Murders. You said you're up all the way.
We're starting to, yeah, it's brilliant. It's not like laugh out loud funny, but it just makes me just smile. But we're starting to now see the impact of the strikes. That actually there's nothing really coming out of it. So the cinema, we've still been getting a steady stream of movies, like you said, Equalizer 3. I'm really looking forward to it. It's had a really good weekend. Is it Labor Day for you guys? If you just had Labor Day, is that the holiday you've just had?
It's Labor Day. Ooh.
So it's like the third biggest Labor Day weekend ever or something for Equalizer 3. There's some record like that anyway. So I mean it's done really, really well. And I think it'll be great. But after this, there's not a lot of movies or new TV shows coming out. We're now going to start getting the bite of this strike that might go on for at least another 6 months. And that's just makes me want to sad. Yeah, everything's being pushed back. What was it? The Daredevil series and another series on Marvel.
And Echo. Both. Yeah, no, not Echo. Ironheart.
Ironheart can completely take out the list. They just give up putting it back. They just took them out. So it really is. Now we're going to start seeing the bite, and I think there's been enough support behind the strikes. But when there's actually nothing on the telly and there's nothing on the cinema, now hopefully we'll start actually seeing people really start getting pissed. People are going to start getting pissed off at some point and go, just give them what they want, for the love of God.
Well, one thing I've noticed is events, movie events coming back to theaters. Like what is it? The re-release of Interstellar on IMAX is coming back to the theaters. Taylor Swift. Oh my God!
Oh yeah, she just.
Oh yeah, the live show in the theaters. Well, that's going to increase AMC's profit certainly. I mean, that
you just saw her pre-sales beat out Deadpool. I think Deadpool 2 had the most number of pre-sales before any movie ever, and Taylor Swift just beat that out.
Yeah,
which is
just
insane.
mopped the floor with Deadpool, and so I'm starting to see a lot of those.
Yeah, that's what we're going to get next.
In the trailers, alternative events. That's just not a flat out movie.
And it'll even if the strikes ended tomorrow, that's going to be us for the next 6 months, because it'll take at least 3 to 4 months for the studios to get going again, and then never mind getting anything into production, pre-production, all these sorts of things. So
getting score written.
We're all screwed.
Are the composers and musicians, are they on strike also for soundtracks, or is it still?
No.
Yeah.
There's been some stuff there's been some like solidarity stuff going on, but no particularly.
And I noticed
that they said that they might spread it through to games and things, haven't they? As well, just cause more problems.
That could be huge.
I noticed that independent film makers are really, they've already agreed to the SAG-AFTRA issues, and they're the ones I think it's a good play for them, because they pay the writers and everybody what they need, guarantee the rights of the actors, and now they're going to be the only things in the theater, because the big guys just can't get off the pot, so to speak. They're just still stuck in this mentality of not paying the creatives. So it's like, what's his name? Driver.
Adam Driver.
Yeah, he had this announcement. There was this independent production he was doing that was okay with the unions because the production company said, "Oh yeah, shit, we'll agree, no problem." And they're going to be in the theaters, and Disney kind of won't have anything new for quite some time. I think it's a genius move on the indies. Good for them.
Anyway, let's just come up with something sooner rather than later. Right, let's call it a day, chaps. So thank you so much. I'm massively dehydrated, and I need to go and lie down.
That's because you ain't peeing all the time.
You need a gallon of water.
You'll see why. When you watch the video tomorrow, you'll see why I'm struggling a little bit today. Oh, and then I actually then went to the pub and started drinking after this walk that nearly killed me. So, just one long list of cock-ups. But thank you so much, guys. As always, absolutely brilliant chat. We'll try to talk about something a bit more fun than silly.
So Jay, did your butt plug come in the mail this week? You said
the sidetrack logo, right?
Well, he said he got the Sparkle Vader on order. I'm just wondering if it came in.
The problem was Matt designed our logo, and it's really pointy. So that's another reason why I'm quite.
Oh my god! It's the butt plugs in the logo now.
Yeah. So I got a.
Matt is so subversive. I love him to death.
No, can we never mention butt plugs on this channel again?
Sure.
Moratorium on them. No more butt plugs. Okay?
Did you see on Instagram that in chess news that
yes, he's allowed back in, but
he's been cleared to play.
He got
the
cleared.
vibrator has been cleared to play.
He's cleared out.
Oh, for the love of God! Right, guys.
Matt muted and ran off. He's like, "I'm out.
I'm done.
We're done. We're out of here. Captain Caveman, you were late. So that's not my fault. So. Go back and start watching from the beginning.
It was a caveman.
Thank you so much. Made of salt?
Oh, because you're dehydrated.
Well,
okay.
Do you have a salt rock? But oh no, never mind.
Yeah. Not gonna happen. No.
Oh man.
I think we're stuck with the butt plugs. Right, so I am going to do
a butt plug. You're gonna need some moisturizer down there. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Matt, we'll see you next week, sir. Harris, thank you so much. Stormy Bear, as always, you've been a legend. Say goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Adios.
Bye, guys.
See you later.
Does your butt plug have united?